Welcome to the Building Design Primetime Podcast, focused on providing valuable information for anyone looking to undertake a new build or extension project. We'll share our tips, tricks and stories from a building designer's perspective.
Welcome to the Building Design Primetime Podcast. I'm your host, Amelia, and once again we're joined by Frank Giskus.
How are we, Amelia?
Oh, pretty good for a Friday.
Always good for a Friday.
Yeah.
So what are we going to talk about today?
I thought we'd have a little chat about building envelopes. What are they and how can they affect your block?
Well, I think you've got to also put that in context. In Tasmania, we're fortunate enough to have a statewide planning scheme.
We do.
Some would say fortunate, some would say it's a curse. I think it's fortunate because then you've got over 28 councils. Yes, 28 councils in Tasmania.
We have a lot.
For 550,000 people. Mm-hmm. Defies logic. Don't ever bring up the topic at council about amalgamations because you get the death stares.
You sound like that's coming from experience.
Oh, yeah, I've done it just as a laugh sometimes and it hasn't gone down too well.
I don't reckon.
They go justify their existence.
Oh, dear.
And I said, well, I'm talking from pure 550,000 people, 28 councils. I think there's a little bit too much duplication there. Anyway, that's a whole nother topic.
It is.
That's beyond what we're going to talk about.
You mean dispute?
Well, it would be, but most people would agree. Anyway, I'm going down a rabbit hole.
On your soapbox.
On my soapbox. So, building envelopes. So, in Tasmania, under the general residential zoning, they have had this for quite a while. It's like putting a bowl over your general residential site. And your house has to fit inside that bowl because it's not just about being so far off the side boundary, because this bowl, it can come up the sides. So I'll start with a normal rectangle block. So you have a normal setback. The setback, frontage setback, is from the front of your boundary to the front of your house that you're allowed. There's minimum requirements. Say you're the first person in the street, it's usually about 4.5 metres.
And that depends on your zoning. You're talking about general residential?
General residential,
yep.
You're looking at about 4.5 metres for your primary setback. Now, if you're in a corner block, which one's your primary setback?
Is it your side one?
No.
Or is it your front?
Well, what's the side, what's the front? On a corner, which one?
Oh, well, it depends what way the house is facing.
No. It's determined at the subdivision level.
Okay.
So then the frontage is what they determine as front. And usually it's the narrower end because that's usually that's where the entry services might come in. Mm-hmm. That's not hard and fast, but that is determined at that subdivision level. And then when they name the streets and give numbers, then you can see which is the primary.
Okay.
Then you got 4.5 metres, and then on the secondary, which is the other side, is about 3 metres. Now, from an envelope point of view, just nothing on setbacks. Say if you're the last block in the street and everyone has chosen to go, hey, you know what, we like 5.5 metres. You don't like 5.5 metres. I want 4.5 because I want to put a big shed in my backyard. Mm-hmm. Bad luck. You have to comply with everyone else's.
Oh, do you really?
Yep. So you don't have this weird street frontage of bits and bobs popping out everywhere. And I understand that, and you don't ruin the street frontage.
Yes.
Nothing like a big carport or a shed. When you go down to some of the old subdivisions, a big shed or carport out the front of the house. Everyone else is set back and you've got this, what the heck is that?
Yeah, true.
It looks wrong. Mm-hmm. Now, there are exceptions to that rule due to topography. You know, if they're a steep site, you can build closer to the front for your garages and stuff.
Yeah.
But also they don't like garage doors are not a great look. We all admit that. They're a necessary evil.
True.
To get your cars undercover. We don't want that to be the jewel of the front of the house.
Just the garage.
Just the garage, yes.
Yeah.
So you really want to have that setback a little bit further if you can, and they encourage that. So back to the envelope. So if you're front, you come back 4.5 metres, and if you go on to the Tasmanian planning scheme, the state planning provisions, it shows, hey, big flat front, and you can go 8.5 metres high with your house.
Okay.
But.
Oh, here we go.
Yep. On the sides, you can only go, from the side bounds, you can only come up 3 metres.
What?
Yeah, it will make sense.
Okay.
Then it goes across at 45 degrees. So go up 3 metres across 45 until you hit the 8.5 metres, and that's your envelope when you look from the front.
Okay, so the envelope has a height restriction.
Of course, everything has a height restriction. If you had your way, you'd build some 12 metre high 3-storey monstrosity.
True.
Yeah.
Yes.
Get a better view.
Yes, that's true.
And at the rear, you can go all the way to the back boundary fence, same 3 metres, come up 45 degrees. And the idea behind this is you can build a house, 2 stories, and what happens if you build a really big 2 stories, you've got high ceiling heights in there because you want to get the view. You can cast a shadow over the neighbouring property. So you could actually ruin someone else's property by building this big thing and putting a shadow over their windows where they might be facing north from the side.
Yeah.
And you cut off their sunlight so they don't get any sun into their living rooms and their bedrooms anymore.
They're not going to be real happy.
Well, you don't. And vice versa, same with your backyard. Or do you want them looking in your backyard?
Yeah, it becomes a privacy problem.
There's a privacy. So that's all built into this. And it's not a bad way of doing it. Where it falls over, I feel, is when you have a steep site.
Yeah, because you're a little bit limited in
Yeah.
terms of design and where
Yeah.
you can put things.
And do you have to dig in the back to be able to get meat within the envelope? So the idea behind it, if you breach the envelope, you then have to justify, I'm not looking into my neighbour's backyard or in their deck or looking at their car park or windows matching each other, looking into each other. Not a good look. Then you also don't cast a shadow as what is their private open space.
Okay.
This is the space that is determined to be the main area of usage in the backyard or private owned space. It could be deck off the side, it could be your alfresco, but that's not a very big space. But there is a requirement to allow good amount of sunlight every day. Summer, winter, doesn't matter. And also operational needs as clothes drying and storage, So they all have to have this, and you shouldn't, by you building something, you shouldn't affect your neighbour.
Yes.
So I don't think that is an unreasonable thing. And also with the privacy, as we spoke about as well. So for a simple house, most of the time we can get it through, no problems at all. But there are times because of topography, where north is, where the sun comes in, it gets a little bit more difficult.
Okay.
But our company uses Revit, and we can, once we have a high quality detail survey, we also are able to pick up the neighbouring properties, we can model it and do predictions on all the sunlight and how it will cast a shadow. You can also line up, well, what's the view going to be like? Do we need to put privacy screens? Do we need to put opaque film over the glass so it's not looking into the neighbour's yard? So, or you redesign it, you move windows, you move positions, certain elements on the house, so then the neighbouring property maintains privacy, sunlight, and good usage of their space.
Okay.
Now, just a caveat here, there will be people listening to this, there'll be professional planners, and they may correct me on a couple of these items. I am reading and researching out of the state planning provisions, and there may be a few things I might have missed. But I'm just giving the general overview.
So if you want to build outside of your building envelope, is
Yes.
how does that work? Is it just a discretionary application or is it a performance solution? How does that work?
It's a discretionary application to the council, and you have to meet the performance criteria within the planning scheme. So
Okay.
there's 2 things. You meet the acceptable solution, you fit within the envelope.
Okay.
I can't because it's a steep block, so it's going to be sticking out somewhere.
Yes.
Then I have to meet the performance criteria. And those are a couple of those items I mentioned before. Private open space, overshadowing, not looking into habitable rooms in the adjoining dwellings, not unreasonable reduction in solar on existing solar energy installations. So there's a few things to consider.
Yeah, there's a lot of things to consider.
Yeah. Now, I mentioned corner blocks. They're a little bit different because you have that side setback. You've got 3 metres. That goes straight up to 8.5.
Okay.
But where it hits a neighbouring property, boundaries, up 3 metres across 45 degrees, up to 8.5 metres.
Okay.
So that can make it a little bit tougher because you lose a lot of space on the block. Internal blocks are very much like a rectangle block. You go down the driveway, you have a 4.5 metre setback, and then you've got the normal envelope requirements.
Okay.
So you can put a shed in the backyard, because it can go all the way to the back. If it's under 3 metres, you won't break the envelope.
Yes.
So it actually works well. Previously, it used to only go to 4 metres off the back boundary.
Oh,
so
really?
Every shed was discretionary.
To be 4 metres off.
Well, no, to put it on the boundary. Who wants to have 4 metres
No
behind
one
their
wants
shed?
to. Yeah, that's a waste of space.
Exactly. So you want to put it up against the boundary. So they changed that, a bit of common sense. So be aware of the size block compared to the size house you want to build too.
I mean, have people been caught out where they've bought a block and the building envelope might be quite small?
Because of topography. Generally, it's a problem in topography. It's a steep site. Whether you're driving up into it or dropping down into it, you will always break the envelope every time.
But I guess it comes back to do your research as well, because
That's
surely...
a hard one to research,
Yeah,
to be fair.
surely
It is.
people would get caught out. They want a 4-bedroom house with 2 bathrooms and it can't fit that within the envelope.
But that's okay. Then we design it to meet the performance criteria. So you can do that. And
as long as it meets the performance criteria.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So then we can design to suit straight off the bat. We already know we've got to hit those requirements. We know what's next door. You get the information from aerial satellite shots. The surveyor hasn't just done your block, it's picked up the neighbouring properties with laser, and then we can model that in 3D.
Okay.
So then we can actually pick up all the windows, all of it to great detail, and then we can put it into our Revit 3D software, and then from there we model the house, we can do the shadow diagrams, and can get quite accurate.
Okay.
It all comes down to a high quality survey, beautiful feature survey, and then generally we can meet a lot of people's needs.
Okay, so you haven't come across too many that have fallen over because they can't fit within the building envelope or they can't fit within the performance criteria?
I've had a few, but it came down to cost more than anything because steep blocks are more expensive. We had one recently. It was so steep, like the house was over, it was, what was it? Nearly 6 metres to the first floor. It was nearly, I think it was close to 11 or 12 metres at its highest point.
Oh, wow.
That's how steep this was. It was unbelievable. Not a traditional construction. In the end, it did affect the neighbouring property, but we met all the requirements for setback and more, but we had to go, in the end, we had to go to appeals tribunal.
Really?
And we met the neighbour and we explained it, and they understood the problem we were having. And to be fair, he was going to lose a view too.
Yeah, okay.
It was the view of the Derwent River in Hobart. And that was unfortunate, but the way, subdivisions done like this don't consider how houses are going to be built on there sometimes. It was crazy steep. You're lucky to get an excavator to get up the hill.
Oh, wow.
It was really crazy. And the construction techniques to build this is quite different to normal. You're doing big steel structures have to be craned in, building crane platforms and stuff like that.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So quite an expensive build, but the views were insane. They were fantastic.
Yeah.
We got that one through, but now it's going to come to, well, what's the budget to build this thing?
Yeah, okay. Yeah.
So, because the cost had increased quite a bit during that period. And that we've spoken about that before.
We have, yeah.
You know, how costs, I think it's taken nearly 18 months to get the house through.
Wow.
Because of the appeals and everything, because it takes a fair while. And the costs jumped quite a lot.
Yeah, I can imagine.
So, but they may do it, I'm not sure yet. They're still deliberating. So we're working with the builder on that as well. So envelopes, you're not going to know, but just consider steep blocks, envelope, you're going to breach it. It's going to be a discretionary application. It can be designed as long as you're not trying to design a too big a house to the site. Be aware there's also limitations on the percentage of coverage of the site too.
Okay.
Just trying to find it. I think it was you cannot do greater than 50% of site coverage for your residence.
Oh, really?
Pretty sure it was.
So you're not allowed to exceed the building envelope by more than 50%?
No, not that. It's the area. So if your block is 800 square metres, you can't cover the area of greater than...
400? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, well, hang on. Let me find it. Come on. Here we go. Site coverage. So we've got the envelope. So the dwellings have to be compatible with the amenity of the area. So we spoke about street frontage, setbacks. Mm-hmm. You've got to meet the setback requirements because of the streetscape amenity of the area. No different with the footprint on the block. So you've got to allow for outdoor recreation, opportunity for plants, gardens, and your private open space and access to sun. So site coverage is no more than 50%, excluding eaves up to 600 wide. So 800 block, 400 square metre house. That's a big house.
Okay, so if you had a really big property, like an acre...
Yeah, but that's not general residential.
That's what I mean. Is it different?
Yes, it is. You don't have an envelope with general residential, just got a height limit and you've got very big setbacks.
Okay.
But for this, it's for general residential, the blocks vary from, I think they can go from like 350 to 1,200 square metres on a general residential.
Yeah, yeah.
And on average here, they're about 500 to 600. Even 600 to 300 square metre house, that's a big house.
Yeah, yeah. I'm just curious on a bigger property though. Like, would it be in the covenants that you can only, like, you have to build a certain size, or does it come under the building envelope? Because in terms of the streetscape of it, you don't want like a tiny house on a huge property. You know what I mean?
But they do. People do.
So you're allowed to do that mostly then.
Yeah. The only limitations I've seen are in specific subdivisions where they'll go no houses less than 140 square metres.
I was going to say there are subdivisions like that.
No colour-bond cladding allowed, or things like no animals, other than a dog and a cat.
Yeah.
Or there's all sorts of covenants. So that's different to the planning.
Okay, so how is it different if it's not general residential then?
Well, that I could go through a dozen zonings here, and it's all slightly different. So they don't run envelopes; they just run height, setbacks.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right.
So whereas general resi is the most common block anyone will buy. Unlike you love your rural because you've got your horses.
Yeah.
Perfect. So then you've got a lot less restrictions.
So I can build, if I wanted to, a supermarket-sized house.
I suppose I'd say IGA.
Okay.
A small independent supermarket might be 500 square metre house.
Yep.
We've done one.
I think I'm going to need a pay rise for that. If I want to build a supermarket on my block.
Just gone silent there. I think you might have to invest in some of those other ideas we had before.
No, you might be more forthcoming if I say it's a bottle shop or something like that, or a car shop.
Car shop, yeah. So be aware there is also, you can push your house closer to the boundaries, single story. You can get closer to the boundary and go within 900 mil because you go up 3 metres and it goes 45 degrees, single story house, you can get closer on one side.
Okay.
When you go 2-story, obviously, you get a little bit more restricted within where you sit within the envelope.
Because of the privacy and all that stuff.
Overshadowing, all the rest of that,
Yeah.
But site coverage is an important one as well, because when you get the really small blocks, well, you're going to fill it.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. So that's it for envelopes. Now, hard to do research on this is where you need a planning specialist, building designers, architects. They will generally know all this stuff in your local area.
Okay.
Now, this is all Tasmanian based. On the Big Island, the rest of you guys on the mainland, as we call you, you will have different requirements, and I've got no doubt they'll have setbacks, heights, limitations. Please be aware when you're purchasing a block and you have this dream of doing something, you might find there's a height covenant on there.
Yes.
We've had that here where someone's subdivided a piece off their house. It's an old place, but they don't want to lose the view, and they're going to stop you. You can only go 5 metres because they can look straight over the tops for their view.
Okay.
And it can be challenged legally.
One other question. What if you have other dwellings, for example, a shed or a second house? Does that still have to be within the envelope? And is it the driveway included in the envelope? How does that work?
Well, driveways don't go much higher than the ground, do they?
True.
Yeah, so...
I guess what's counted as built, I guess, is in that envelope.
Fair enough. So sheds have to be within the envelope. Secondary dwellings, i.e. granny flats, have to be within the envelope as well.
Okay.
Yep. Driveways, funny you should say that. We've had some driveways come out of the ground a long, long way, like a couple of metres.
Yeah.
Very expensive. And be pretty unlucky if they broke your envelope.
True.
So, but it's a fair point because we've just done some where you drive down into a site, so it's really steep, and the driveway could be up out of the air, or the parking spot could be 2-3 metres out of the air. Very expensive, but
Yeah.
I'll guarantee you the views are pretty cool.
Yeah, usually they are for a property like that.
Yep, and more expensive to build, as we've spoken before. Steep site, expensive site.
Yeah.
But hopefully that helps everyone to understand when you buy a block, and this will probably apply to more smaller blocks and steeper blocks, the envelope will more than likely make you go through a discretionary application. But it can be done as long as you're not building anything that's too outrageous in size.
Yeah.
Do it in proportion to the block.
And your building designer, I guess, will be able to help you navigate
they'll know
that.
it inside out.
Yeah.
They'll know it inside out because we
Yeah.
have to do this all day, every day. So, and you get skilled in the zoning provisions. Yeah, or you hire a planner. That's true. But most building designers, architects should be able to handle a residential and make the adjustments to the design to get it to comply.
Okay. I guess that's the take-home point, isn't it?
Yep. Your building designer, your architects are going to be your friends in this.
They are. All right, we might wrap it up there, folks. Thanks for listening to the Building Design Primetime Podcast.
Catch us later.
You're listening to the Building Design Primetime Podcast.